This is the MO Sessions podcast, where we talk about magic ways to become a better magician to be good to your magic. I'm your host, Benny Slade, and I couldn't be any more thrilled that you are here. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the MO Sessions. We're in a different format. I'm very excited to be sharing this new format with you. I decided to give it a go, and here we are. So on today's episode, I want to talk a little bit about when you're putting different effects for your show together and how to connect them. I think it's important to have an idea. When I was going through it, I had no idea. Right now I'm putting a show together, and I had no idea on how to put certain effects together and which ones go with which, and have a flow to it, have it make sense, rather than having to chop it all up and it be all over the place. If you're the type of magician that's really good at jazzing and you can go with the flow and go through everything like that, I think that's amazing. But this is more so just kind of like a novice beginner conversation about my experience about moving through putting different effects together, and a little bit of information about my thought behind it, and where I'm getting some influence from. So when you're putting your show together, I think the very first thing for me was to try to figure out what kind of show I wanted to do in terms of platform. Did I want to do a close-up? Did I want to do a parlor? Did I want to do stage? And for me and for my style, which I think I have another episode on. If not, then I'll make a whole different episode about style. Your personality as a performer, and what fits you the best is what makes the most sense. So when we're talking about trying to figure out what you want your set to be, and your style, it's important to look into all of it. I'll go off on a quick little tangent about something. I was working in a barbershop, and my boss, who is a master barber of 40 years or so, always told me that he would look at the shop and he would go, what do you see in the shop? And there's stuff all over the walls and pictures and the chairs, early 1920 chairs and everything. And I'd say there's a lot of stuff. He goes, no, you gotta look at the details. You gotta look at all the details when you're cleaning the shop and taking care of the shop. You have to look at all the details. And I would say, details? Okay. And from then on, it was when I was brought on to work at the shop, I started off as front desk and an apprentice. And every single day I really thought about that, about details. And, the shop is, I've been fortunate enough to work in restaurants. I come from retail and restaurants and hospitality. And so I really thought about that, details. So what does that mean, details? When I look at the shop, when I'm cleaning the shop, I'm making sure I'm getting all the nooks and crannies, sweeping up all the hair, taking care of all the different aspects of, even like down to the towels. I had gotten, we were doing hot towel shaves, and even just towels, like presentation to the customer about towels, like what they look like. We had white towels. They got to be clean. They got to be, pristine. They got to be stain free. And I thought that was really interesting. And even and the whole lesson was that when you're going to do a haircut, it's all about details in the haircut. Was the bigger lesson there, was when you're going to do a haircut, it's all about details and how the shape of the hair looks and the head shape and how it fits and everything. And I thought to myself, how can I apply that to magic? So aside from having like a rhythm and a flow to your set, to your magic, I think it's really important to be able to have the details. So for me, it was when I was planning my show out, what is it that I want my show to look like? What are all the details about it? I even got it down to like I'm commissioning a close-up table right now. So it's like when you have something like that in your brain and you want it to be specific and you want it to be like just right. That's how I wanted it to go. I wanted it down to the details. What was my suit going to look like? Because I would wear a suit. That's how I would perform, or a casual blazer. What would the table look like? What would the fabric feel like? What would the chairs look like? What kind of environment am I, performing in? Those are all really important things. And, I've kind of been workshopping some things at some weddings I've been to and getting some feedback. And even then, the biggest thing that I'm getting is that it's the way you're presenting your magic is, they have, well, I had one person tell me like I have no idea. I have no idea how you did it. I have no idea, it just baffled. And I kind of chuckle about it because it's true. When we have a large gamut of how people can feel about our magic. They can sit there and be speechless. We could have guys who are on, like David Blaine, who are like, it's mind boggling, it's amazing. Bingo bango, it's one of those things where people respond naturally to what they see. Some people flip the fuck out, and some people cry. And it's not necessarily what you want to get from the audience completely. It's more so about the details of your show. It's about what they're feeling when they walk in. Same thing with a barbershop, same thing with a restaurant. When you walk into a restaurant, would you eat in a restaurant that's got dirty floors and the seats are ripped and, it kind of got like a weird funk smell to it? I personally wouldn't. Coming from the restaurant industry, it's a big no for me. Same thing. From the beginning to the end, you want them to experience something that they can walk away and say it's not necessarily, if they don't remember the magic, which I don't know why they wouldn't. If they don't remember the magic, they remember the environment. They remember something from that whole environment. They remember you, your magic, the environment. If you can cross all those things off your list, you're 100% winning. And I'll give you a really good example before, and then we'll jump into the smaller pieces of everything. So I'm in Georgia, and Mario the Maker Magician was coming into town, and it had been my first time seeing him. And for me, it was being respectful to the hype. It was understanding Mario is an incredible magician, but he's getting labeled as an incredible kids magician or youth entertainer or whatever sort of label or category you want to put that under. And for me, kids magicians, really good kids magicians there's a small circle. There's a small circle of really good kid magicians, in my opinion. That's not solidified, that's not fact, that's just my opinion. If you can make kids feel wonder and amazement and magic, you're doing your job, in my opinion. So I went to go see him, and the moment I walked in, like the venue was good. It was at a normal auditorium, like a theater situation, which is located in a historic district, which I was like, checks all the boxes so far. And I walk in and he has the meet and greet set up, which I was like, awesome. It's not like super like, oh, he's Mario and you can't see him and you can't shake his hand and say hello and thank you and, you're awesome, et cetera, et cetera. So that was, you could check that off the boxes. But even the theater itself was really nice. The seating was really nice. The mezzanine was really nice. The way they had it set up. And as you're walking into the theater, there's like the intro music, and that was really good. It was almost like I'm a really big circus fan and sideshow fan. So the what's it called? Calliope, the the thing that's built in. It used to be part of the circus trains when they used to travel, but it was like the steam or air horn music. Anyways, there's a little bit of that going, and there was some modern music going, and I really sat there and I thought, wow, this is really good music, and people are sitting down, and you can kind of start feeling the environment build up. And he has, the background to, everything, and he's got the lights all, right. Everything looks great, everything's set up, and you just don't know what's going to happen. So I'm sitting there and I'm watching, and I'm like, this is going to be great. You could tell from the get-go, this guy's professional, he knows what he's doing. He's David Blaine's favorite, Robert De Niro's favorite. We've heard him, we've seen him on Fallon, and now he's in front of us. So he starts, and yeah, he did his job, because I got really emotional at a point, because I felt like a kid again, watching not just a really good magician, but I felt like a kid again. He really pulls out the amazement and the wonder, and, it's, if you get a chance to see him in your town or country or wherever, go. Absolutely go. And he, for me, at that point, I was really honing in on what I wanted to do with magic. The ammo sessions kind of had been dormant, and I was, trying to figure it all out. And one of the biggest challenges for me was practicing cups and balls. To this day, I love cups and balls. I think for me, it's an essential part of my repertoire. And so he does cups and balls. And I thought to myself, well, this is the oldest trick in the book. How is he going to do cups and balls in front of all these people, all the way up there on that stage? And I had been sitting mezzanine front row. So it feels like you're closer, but it almost comes off as you're a little bit further. And he did cups and balls, and I was fooled. And I got emotional about it. I got emotional about it because I realized at that moment, he is an incredible magician. And he's put in the time and the practice, and just not even the sleight of hand is great, but for me, it's the technology that really blows me away. I don't know how it works. It's not my cup of tea, and big kudos to Mario for that. But he did cups and balls, and I was really like, the way he does cups and balls, and the way he presents it to kids, and the way he gets everybody. He gets magicians, kids, adults, and you're watching it, and you really just, you get sucked into the entertainment. And I gave him a standing ovation when he was done, because it had been a while since I seen, regardless if it was, for young kids or young adults, it was fantastic magic. And I looked at that show and I said, every single piece that he did, every effect that he did back to back, it just flowed right through. We were all on the same boat. There was no rocks, no turbulence, nothing. It was just smooth sailing, and he was our captain. And for me, it was, and it's like that scene in Willy Wonka when they're in the tunnel, na, 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 and they're singing the song, very imagination, and they're doing that whole thing. And you get distracted by everything around you that you don't realize by the time he's, had finished, you're there. And when we arrived at the end of the show, I really was like, that's it? We're done? There's no more? Like, I want more. I want to see more great magic. And that is a type of feeling somebody can feel at your show, for sure. So that's my preface a little bit to this episode. So we're just going to go in a little bit further and talk about my experience with connecting all the pieces. So it is important to have all the details of your environment right. You want for me personally, like the moment they walk into whatever venue I'm in, it has to be right all the way to the end. So having a flow and a rhythm is really important as well. Di Vernon, well, let me just go back and say, I'm looking at my Johnny Thompson books, but in the Johnny Thompson book is Di Vernon's Castle Act. And if you look at his Castle Act, and you've heard magicians talk about it, and you've heard Johnny Thompson and Paul Vigil and Jared Kopp and all these guys talk about opening up with cups and balls and why that's so interesting. So Di Vernon had a format. It was cups, coins, and then cards. And when you think about it and you try to assess why that is, for me personally, cups and balls is the big opener. A lot of people close with it, which I get that and I understand it. But cups and balls it has all the elements of magic if you do it correctly. And once you have that down, then you think about coins. Well, that makes sense also, because you can make a coin appear, you can make it disappear, you can make it transpose, you can make it transport, you can make it invisible, you can make it solid, you could do whatever with coins, right? So it's that same sort of think about Matrix. Matrix is a transposition of coins. I've seen matrices where it's not just a transposition of coins, then they it's a color change to it, copper coins, or vanish. Matrix is really interesting because you're not just like transposing coins. You're not moving. You're not making them. You're making them vanish too. Whole different discussion about transpositions and vanishes, and that's a whole different thing. Different conversation. So then you start thinking about coins, right? You're thinking about, copper and silver. One of the big ones I'm really playing with right now is expansion of texture, which is, I think it's great. I don't think enough magicians do it. I probably shouldn't have said it on here, but I said it anyways. I don't think enough magicians do it. I think it's a really interesting premise. It's classic. It's a classic. For me, I always thought about putting them in 3. I've heard putting them in 3s. Some people do 2, like if they're longer, like a 2-phase coin situation, and then go into cards. I've modeled my show after that same sort of model. And I've talked to a couple magicians about that format, and they've seen my set list and they're like, that's good. Maybe we can open up a space here and put this here. And, because my show's more storytelling than it is, look at this, boom, look at this, boom, boom, boom. And we're just going back and back and back. There's a story behind it. There's a flow to it. So I think it's really important to find that flow and find that rhythm when performing. I think putting everything in 3 makes sense. Cups and balls, you can have, you can probably go up to 3, 4, 5 phases, maybe 6 phases. I mean, I know magicians that do 3 phases and they kill it. It just depends on like how many times you want them to vanish and come back and then change and then boom, final load, and then boom, another final load. You could do 4 phases. You can get away with 4 phases really. But yeah, let's just say that's your 3 phases right there. That's what that is. And then coins too. For me, it's like what I'm learning with my coins is, which is new to me. I was always all cards up until a year ago or so. And more recently, within the past few months, I've really been kind of diving into the coin stuff, which is great. It just depends on what you're trying to, like how you want to group them together. Me personally, I'm not going to say my repertoire on here. But it took me a while to figure out A, B, and C. not necessarily like A needs to connect to C and C needs to connect to B. They just need to flow. What I'm not going to do is go to ABC with the coin stuff and then ABC with card stuff. Like even C, like now I'm starting to get to where C of the coin set needs to make sense going into A for the card set. Like even that transition has to make sense. Like I'm not gonna finish with the coin effect and then be like, all right, and now we're gonna do triumph. That you could. You can think about them being separate too. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. But everything in threes. For me it's been threes. I even do like if they want to see ABC of my coin set and then they're like, oh, do you have one more? Or can you do one more? Sure. I always have one or two more ready to go, which is also really important. But what doesn't make sense is to go into like breaking it up where it's like, let's do A from the coin set and now we're going to do a silk routine. And then we're going to go into B of the coins, like breaking it up with other shit in between. Just that doesn't make sense. And I've seen it before where I'm like, oh, wait, now we're doing like a silk thing? That was really confusing. I'm not sure where we're going. It's all over. Oh, and now we have dice. Why do we have dice? Oh, now we're going into so the coins are done and now we're moving to cards and there's dice. Okay. Unless it makes sense, and you gotta have it make sense. If it makes sense to break it up that way, then do it. But I've seen some really bad magic where I'm like, what? What's this tiny? What are they doing with that? This is a paperclip. Oh, and now we're with money, and it's confusing. We just went from like doing a card trick to now we're on money, and now we're going back to the cards, and now we're pulling out dice, and now the money and the cards are put up. I'm just confused by all of it. I've seen it. It's out there. I think it's really important also to visualize it. Visualize it. Even with all of this, all the podcast stuff, for me, it was in order to get this set up is exactly how I saw it in my head. I literally drew it out. I don't think I have. No, my notebook's not over here. But I drew it out. I was like, the camera has to go here, the other camera has to go here, and this has to go here, and I can't have it higher than here or below here. And so if you want to draw it out, like with my stuff, I literally drew 3 boxes on a blank sheet of paper and in giant letters. I'll show you this. I use this a lot. This is I don't know if the camera will catch that, but it's a Sharpie China marker. These are great. I sketch with these. I do everything with the China marker. But I literally draw a square on the piece of paper, and in big letters, I do coins or cards or whatever it is I'm working on, or cups and balls, and A, B, C. And then, like a family tree, you have the 3, and then you have another one down here that might be D or A part 2 or B part 2, just in case they want to see more. It's always an option. So I always do that. And same thing with the podcast. Like I was doing it that way for a while. So, and even in the I'm going to say old days, but a few years ago when I started the podcast, my journal, I would break up the episodes that way. So that's my structure is cups, coins, and cards. It's not everybody. You don't have to do it that way. You could do, depending on what it is you're trying to do, if you're close up or at a table or standing or seated or trade show, you could take it and change it. But for me, like I'm finding it's not in my set, but coins across it's really good. Especially like the Roth one. That's a really good solid one. Ponta Smith has one. Ponta the Smith. I hope I'm saying that correctly. Has a really good one. it just depends on what it is you're trying to do with it. And then going from that and going into Matrix makes sense because you're taking coins from one hand to the other, right? They're seeing that change and then showing them something else. And the cards make sense too because maybe you're about to go into cards and the cards happen to be on the table already and you're doing Matrix with the cards and see, that makes sense. So you want to make sure that each one is great for each other when you're building out your set. I also figured out that with building my set, I'm trying to see how I can explain this so you guys get a sense of how I think about it visually in my head. I think it's really important to understand the skill levels. If you're a beginner magician, your set, we're just going to use an example. We're going to do cups, coins, and cards. So if you're using cups, coins, and cards, and you're a beginner, let's just say that's skill level 1. So your skill level 1 of that set is your foundation. So when you go to, you can still stay in skill level 1 and grow on expanding A, B, and C. Maybe you don't know how to do like for me right now, I'm not very good with the Vernon wand spin, the Silent Moor wand spin. And I'm working on it. But right now I can't put that up there with my cups and balls yet. So let's just say cups and balls is at scale level 1. And then there's another tier, skill 2. You can do the exact same set, but we're maybe doing a different sleight or we're incorporating a different move or connector move. A connector move, I don't know how many are returning listeners or who's new to the podcast, but I'll just kind of say a connector move is a move that's either not that popular or it's popular and people are using it the wrong way or whatever it is, but it's really a move to connect one sleight to another. I don't have an example. I did a whole episode on it previously on the old MO sessions talking about it. But it's pretty much, it's a connector move. It's a bridge move between two to get you into a sleight or a utility move. It's a connector move. It connects it. I don't know why I'm explaining it. It makes sense, I guess. So thinking about your set, cups, coins, cards, skill level 1, you can even zoom in on it and say my cups and balls are at skill level 1 and it has phases 1, 2, and 3. Skill level 2 would be phases 1, 2, 3, and 4. You could figure that out for yourself. For me, it's like skill level, like being a master magician is being able to fluently do cups and balls and be able to jazz through it as well. Where you're not like, in a stiff sort of like juggling. When you see beginner jugglers, they're so focused. They're so focused but when you look at, some other jugglers, they're focused, but they're able to look over here and they're able to look over here and they're able to throw and, they're able to do the whole thing. That was me air juggling. I hope you enjoyed that. So I'll give you a great example of something that I'm working on. I'll throw in a few plugs. And then if we want to have another episode on this and kind of expand some more on it, we can do that. And then I'll talk to you about why this format is new and it's different and it's better. So before I start closing it out, what I will say is research 2 to 3 other variations of one effect. That's what I mean by skill 1, skill 2, skill 3. Coins across the basic one from Bobo's. Look, read it. Do it. Do that one from the book. Exactly how it is. Tier 2 to that would be take that, understand it, and then go and find another version of that. Look at Roth's. Look at, Michael Rubinstein's version. There's so many out there. Just figure out what works for you and what makes sense. And that's a whole other thing. There's a whole encyclopedia of just one effect. You look at a book like Encyclopedia of Card Tricks, and there's just one section on Svengali decks. That's crazy. So it's about finding which one works best for you. Um, and that's how I kind of go into my building of sets, is like I start at the very base and then I'll expand it from there. So I'm going to give a really big shout out to Jeff Price. Jeff Price is an incredible creator, inventor, and magician who I've been in communication with, and his products. I missed out on like the first release, the first round of stuff he came out with, and his stuff is amazing. He came out with the random card generator and immediately was trying to figure out how I can incorporate it into my show. I think the way it comes is a great start. It's mind blowing. It really kills. It does a really great job. But for me, I was like, I want it to be more. I want it to be more than just this is an orange backed random card generator and this is what we're going to do with it. And go into mentalism, which is also really great. And I had an idea to combine it with another classical effect, which I'm not going to say because it is part of my repertoire now. With the help of a fantastic magician, Jeff Korn, who is, I'm going to give him huge props, has been so helpful along my journey of trying to create my set, my repertoire, and what would go together and what wouldn't go together. Great guy. If you can find him, get in contact with him, give him a hello, a shout out. This is my shout out. And we had been talking about, well, what does this look like, and would that go together, and what's your thoughts on this? And he was so kind about it. And so he had thrown this idea out there, and I was like, holy shit, that's a really good idea. So, VO was right. He's got some really great ideas. And I went to a wedding, and we have a family member who's just obsessed with magic, and every time I see him, it's like, bring magic, and I'm always like, I am the magic. I'm here. That's all you need. You don't need any magic tricks. I am the magic. And so I'll bring a few things every time I see him. It's a great way for me to workshop some stuff with him because he always gives really honest feedback. And he has some really honest feedback about the random card generator that I performed, which it makes sense, which I should probably get in contact with Jeff about. But I did my whole, mini set, and I had done this card trick, and then we're going to go into random card generator. And it because it's so, I don't want to say self-working because I feel like that almost undermines the innovative genius behind it. But you could look at it on his website, plainsightmagic.com. It's great. So anyways, I did it, and it's a great example of taking one thing, taking A and taking B, and then you fuse them together. You're putting them together and you're creating A. But it's A on a different level. You've ascended it to a different point. And that's kind of what I've really been playing with, is not just trying to figure out the base of what it's like building a set, but how you can take it to another level. Take the foundation, add layers to it, and make it great. Make it yours, though. Make it your magic. It's okay to do, when you're beginning, doing stuff right out of the book, but even then, just as you grow with it, and as it becomes yours, and it becomes your style, and it becomes, make it more yours. I will give a few unsolicited, nobody's paying me. One day I will get some sponsors and would like to grow it. and do it that way. A couple different things. I want to give a shout out to Steve Reynolds. Steve Reynolds is doing some incredible work. I don't know how to do this. It's gonna be like infomercial, but he has these series called Output series. This is Output 3, and he has these series and they're incredible. There's a lot of Marlowe work in them. A lot of information on Marlowe. This one has Ed Marlowe's personal note card scans, which behind me is my books, but Marlowe is a huge influence on me and always has been. I started with Marlowe and got real serious into it. And Steve, I had reached out to Rocker Bomber actually, and I remember I sent him an email during the pandemic and I didn't get anything back. And then I sent another one and he finally said, well, thank you for checking out my work, but there's also another guy, Steve Reynolds. Please get in contact with him. He's also here in New Orleans. And at that same time, I had been speaking to somebody else who said, go check out Steve Reynolds. He's in New Orleans. And I checked out Steve Reynolds in New Orleans and finally met up with him a few years ago, and mind blowing. And so thank you to Steve Reynolds. He's always been so kind and very gracious with me and honest. And go check out his stuff. SteveReynoldsMagic.com. I think he's on Output. It's in the 20s. But the reason why I wanted to bring up Steve Reynolds is because he's coming out with, and I should have pulled it from my shelf, the OLRAM files. If you know, you know where to find it when it comes out. I've also been playing with these. These are really cool. I found these. I don't know if the camera will pick that up. They're Arcos. Arco is my favorite playing card, aside from the Neat Review decks. Arco, Neat Review, Tally Hose by 3, and then you get in. I like the classic decks, but this I've been on the hunt for. I think I talked about it on one of the very first podcast episodes. They're, instead of bees, this was Arco's Diamondbacks, and you can kind of see what that would look like. Maybe, yeah, there it goes. You could see what it would look like. It's a different Diamondback. It's not just your traditional, like the mini lines that you see on some copies of Erdnase and on the B decks. They're great. And they're vintage. I found them, and this guy was like, oh, they're from my uncle's magic shop from a long time ago. These are like probably 40, 50 years old. And he was like, I have bricks and bricks of them. Do you want them? And I was like, yeah, please. And I kind of was a gamble because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to get into, but I've been on the hunt for these for such a long time without them having any sort of casino marketing, because the original Arcos that were Diamondback came with casino marketing, just like, the bees and aristocrats and et cetera, et cetera. So those are great. I've been playing with those. Check them out if you can find them. eBay has them sometimes, but the 21 Club Diamondback Arcos number 75. And I think the other camera went out, but that's fine because I'm talking here. Maybe next episode I'll get into talking about some books and some other things. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you on the next episode of the MO Sessions.